You say every movie has four main stories?
I would say so, yeah. The stories are, first of all, there's what we call the plot, and that is your central character going after a goal. Then there's the story of your central character dealing with whatever issues, personal issues, their flaw, how to overcome their greed or their selfishness or whatever it is or their fears, whatever it is that's inside of themselves that's preventing them from living the best life that they could. So that's, how many flaws we got there already? That's two.
Oh, okay.
Or three. That's two. The third one is the central emotional relationship story. And that is, there always has to be a relationship that your central character has to either create or mend. And that could be between friends, it could be a father and a daughter, it could be a mother and her father, it could be a mother and her daughter, it could be cousins, it could be just classmates, it could be just new people that you meet. Whatever it is, there's a relationship that has to be created or mended. Let's say there were two brothers that had a fight early on in their world. Now, for some reason, they're going to have to mend that relationship in order to reach the goal, whatever the goal is. All right, so that's three stories. The fourth story is the story of the antagonist. We can't eliminate the antagonist from this picture. They can't just show up every once in a while to be the barrier. They have to have a goal as well. And so they're proceeding towards their own goal. Now, as it turns out, it's the flip of a plot story. So if it's the antagonist, well, the antagonist participates sometimes in the inciting incident, and we should know who the antagonist is by the end of Act 1. But the midpoint for the antagonist is sometimes a difficult point, and we have to know what that is. The low point for the protagonist is the high point for the antagonist. That's when the antagonist looks like he or she is winning, or when the volcano is going to erupt, or when the ocean is going to be too big for the boat, or whatever it is. So it's the opposite. And in the final challenge, the antagonist has got to fight and lose. Now, when you create an antagonist, you have to create that antagonist as better looking, smarter, stronger, faster, just better all around, so that your protagonist has something to fight against. Otherwise, it's too easy for your protagonist. It's not a movie. You know, the movie would be over like that if the antagonist is not a worthy antagonist.
And should you also have the protagonist sort of Achilles heel be the antagonist's pride, shining moment, or strength?
Well, it could be that. It's not necessarily that, but it could be that. We have to think of the antagonist as a real person. So real people, sometimes when they come home, the dog greets them, and the dog is very happy to see the antagonist, and the wife maybe. The antagonist has to have a human quality as well. And it's not necessarily necessary that the antagonist is the opposite in personality of the protagonist. But it helps, because that way you have a real clear antagonism going on there. But let me just say one thing that applies to everything. There are no rules in screenwriting. There are guidelines, there are things to follow if you're new in screenwriting. But once you get a good grip of the rules and good control, not the rules, good grip of the ideas and the conventions of screenwriting, then you can put them aside and do what you want to do. But you will usually follow those 7 points, and you usually follow the other things, but maybe not necessarily in that order, or maybe not necessarily to those proportions. Whatever works, works. And if you've got a complete control of the genre, then you can write whatever you want to write.
When you tell that to people, or they read that in your book, is it freeing to them, or do people rebel against it? Do they want rules at times?
No, it's usually the opposite. People don't want rules, and they come into my class sometimes, and they say, well, I don't want to write it like that. I don't want to follow a formula. And I say, well, okay, you can do whatever you want to do, but I'm going to tell you that writing film is like making a car. You always have to have 4 wheels in a car. Some cars have 3 wheels, but okay. Most cars have 4 wheels. You have to have a steering wheel, you have to have an accelerator, you have to have a brake, you have to have a motor, you have to have a seat. So all those things are true, but you can have a Ferrari, or you can have a Jeep, or you can have a Bentley, or you can have an SUV of some sort. There's an unlimited number of forms for that, and you don't have to follow any specific form, but you do have to have wheels and an engine and a steering wheel and a seat. Those things have to be there. So you have to figure out how you're going to fit that into your form. And usually by that time they say, okay, well, I'm going to do it your way now, but when I'm done with your class, then I'm going to do it my way. And when they're done with my class, they do it my way anyway.
So they see that it works, because
works.
if you're trying to put together this car and there's something missing and the carburetor's not there or something.
Not going to run.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's not going to run. So this applies. Now, some people make electric cars, and so that's been a big change. But it's still a car, still has an engine, still has all those other elements. Some people make movies like Memento. Have you ever seen Memento?
Oh, yeah.
It's backwards, but it's backwards for most of the movie, but parts of the movie are forwards. So if you remember the parts that are in black and white in the sanitarium, they move the story forward, whereas the parts that are in color move the story backwards. But if you flip it and you figure out what the 7 points are from the end to the beginning, they're all there. And they're all there in the parts that move from the beginning to the end in the black and white sections as well. So yes, it's not your average movie. It's not constructed like your average movie, but it has all those 7 points.
And you said a screenwriter should have memorized those 7 points as well.
Well, they should know what they are. Yeah, they should know what they are. You don't have to memorize anything in screenwriting, but you can refer to books, and you can refer to your notes from class, or you can refer to other screenplays. You know, one of the best ways to learn how to write is to read screenplays, and read many screenplays. I must, well, outside of my class, I've read thousands in my class, but outside of my class, I've read, well, probably 1,000, I would guess, at least, and I've seen at least that many movies. And the more you read and the more you see, the better you write.
You see, every movie has a subplot that is about the central emotional relationship. Can we go into detail about that?
Right. It's important to have a central emotional relationship, especially in a romantic comedy. That's what the central plot is about. So I'm going to get back to that in a minute, but let's talk about Wizard of Oz for a second, because Wizard of Oz is a textbook in screenwriting. You can see everything that you want to see in that movie. Relationships between the characters, the 7 points, the strong antagonist, the worthy antagonist. All those things are in the Wizard of Oz. What is the central emotional relationship in the Wizard of Oz? Well, that's an interesting question, because there's so many. This is a little bit unusual. There are so many central emotional relationships. But I would have to say it is with Auntie M and Toto. I think Toto is a central emotional relationship. And also she has relationships with each one of the characters that she goes on the journey with. You know, the Tin Man, the Straw Man, and the Cowardly Lion. So she has relationships that she develops along the way with all those characters. She started off with one with her dog, and she has to continue that one. Her relationship with Auntie M is kind of broken, because she runs away because Auntie M has not given her enough support. And she runs away and looking for another place where she can be at peace with Toto, and over the rainbow, and everything could be, fine. At the end, when she realizes that there's no place like home, she mends that relationship with Auntie M, and she's very happy to be with Auntie M. But we know that's been a tension point throughout the whole story. At the same time, she meets these people along the way. I'm calling them people because they're not exactly people, but they are. They represent the same characters that worked on her farm turned out to be the characters that she meets along the way. For example, the Cowardly Lion is the guy that managed the pigs in the farmyard, and is scared to go to save her from the pigs when she falls into the pigsty. But he's the cowardly lion. The straw man is the guy who reminds her that she has to think for herself. The tin man is the guy that reminds her he has to have a heart. But you know, they talk about that before we get into Oz, but when we're in Oz, those are the parts of her personality that she has to come to grips with, that she has to understand that are necessary. And so these are relationships that she has to create and mend in order to become the person that she needs to be. Because Dorothy goes from being an adolescent to being more or less an adult. That's her change, that's her journey, is to overcome all these things that she needs to overcome. The fear, she needs to have a heart, she needs to think for herself. All the things that these sub-characters are talking about, she has to learn from them. So these relationships are extremely important. Now at the same time, she has to get home. That's her main plot, that's her main story. She has to get home. But she has to learn how to be an adult along the way. And these characters, the relationship with these characters are what forms her personality in the end. And then she's able to return home and renew the relationship with Auntie Em.
And what about her relationship or butting up against the antagonist?
Well, the antagonist, the Wicked Witch, is a representative of Miss Gulch, who lived down the road. That was, that shooed away her dog, that wanted to take her dog, remember? She kidnapped the dog and put it in her basket. The dog escapes, and then that's when Dorothy grabs the dog and runs. But Miss Gulch is represented by the Wicked Witch of the West. And it's the same person, just has different makeup. And that's what we see throughout this film. And her relationship with that is, that teaches her that she has to stand up to people that will not let her live the life that she wants to live, that she needs to live. People that restrict her, people that are nasty to her, people that are against dogs, people that hate dogs or whatever it is. If you stand up to them, then you can beat them. If you let them beat you down, or if you run away from them, then you're never going to live without fear. So Dorothy learns how to live without fear by standing up to the Wicked Witch.
You mentioned we were going to revisit the romantic comedy?
Yeah. Well, the romantic comedy is interesting in that it flips things around. Instead of the main plot being about achieving some sort of a goal, a specific goal, the main plot is the central emotion in a relationship, achieving that goal. So it's either one that needs to be mended or one that needs to be created. So let's look at Harry Met Sally. No, let's look at, excuse me, even better. Let's look at You've Got Mail with Tom Hanks and
Meg Ryan?
Meg Ryan, thank you. I'm glad you remember better than I do.
For some reason, it's just the coffee. Some days I would be stuck to. Okay.
Well, it's good. I mean, because there's so many movies in my head, I can't always pull down every name. But anyway, in You've Got Mail, each of those protagonists has got a goal. Her goal is to keep her mother's or grandmother's shop, her bookstore. His goal is to make a conglomerate of bookstores and to swallow up her bookstore. Those are goals that are now subplots instead of the central plot, which would be in a regular movie. The central plot in this movie is the central emotional relationship. So in most romantic comedies, there always has to be a subplot like that, where they're moving towards that, but at the same time, they're moving towards a relationship. Let's take His Girl Friday, which is a movie from the 30s. I think it's 1939, but I'm not sure. Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. So her goal is to get him to stop interfering with her marriage. And his goal is to get her back. They had been married and divorced. His goal is to get her back. That's the romantic comedy goals. The subplot is to deal with this person that's been wrongly accused and is about to be hanged. So we're dealing with that, but we're also very much more concerned with the relationship story. So romantic comedies deal with relationships, but there's always something else going on that's driving a story as well. Whereas in other kind of a movie that's plot driven, the subplot is the central emotional relationship.